And welcome back. So, for this video, I'm going to talk specifically about the content that I put down here in an example that hopefully you can use as you go forth with your work. So, the example I'm giving all has to do with alcohol-related deaths in the state of Wisconsin. So, the annual rate, as you see here in the situation box at the top, the rate of alcohol-related deaths in Wisconsin over about a 10-year period is 13.5 deaths per 100,000 adults. Now, this compares to a national average of 11 per 100,000 adults. So Wisconsin is at a higher rate by a little over 20% than the national average. So why is that the case? Well, there's kind of a lazier excuse that people in Wisconsin like to think, well, we're a drinking state. It's what we do. We drink alcohol, and that may be true, but that's certainly not unique to Wisconsin. Every state, I think, could probably, maybe with the exception of Utah, could make the state state the case they consume a lot of alcohol. So what makes Wisconsin unique? Well, there are a few things. One of them, and again, it's in the situation box, has to do with beer tax or lack thereof. So in Wisconsin, the beer tax that is charged by the state is 6 cents per gallon of beer. Now, that doesn't really mean a whole lot standing alone. However, it does mean a lot when you realize that that amount hasn't changed in half a century. In 1969, it was 6 cents per gallon of beer. In 2019 and 2020, it is still 6 cents per gallon of beer. Everything has changed with inflation and cost of living adjustments, but not the beer tax. Okay? So what does that mean in terms of long term? It impacts consumption. It keeps beer cheaper here. It keeps alcohol in general cheaper here, so it increases consumption. Another has to do with sobriety checkpoints, or again, the lack thereof. So Wisconsin is one of only 12 states that does not permit it. It's in our state laws. It is not permissible to have sobriety checkpoints. Only 12 states in the United States have such a law, and Wisconsin is one of them. Now, another thing that contributes to alcohol use and abuse has to do with alcohol treatment and prevention. Now, it's underfunded in Wisconsin. However, I would probably say that that's true in all states. AODA is generally underfunded or less than really would be ideal to make the maximum benefit. So that's our situation. We want to reduce the alcohol-related death rate in the state of Wisconsin. So now you scroll down here to where we have the color-coded, kind of the orange, the green, and the purple. And now you can go from left to right, but I like to start at the very end, and I think most people do. So the end being our long-term outcome. Now, a note about the outcomes and the short, the medium, and the long. What does that mean? There is no one right time frame. So if I had to start, I would say short tends to be 1 to 3 years, medium tends to be 3 to 5, and long is 5 or more. Now you can condense it or you can expand it based on whatever your topic is. So in the case of this program, my long-term outcome is to reduce the alcohol-related death rate in Wisconsin by 20%. So that would take it down to 10.8 per 100,000 people, and that's assuming a consistent rate. Now I put a 2-year period of 2025, 2026, so that is roughly about 7 years from now. So that's my long-term outcome. Now, depending on my program, I could now flip back over to the left of your chart to the inputs, but because of the nature of what I'm looking at, I'm going to take a moment here to look at the medium-term outcomes, because the medium-term outcomes are the specific things that I believe, when put into place, will lead to achieving our long-term outcome, and there are 3 of these medium outcomes. The first has to do with the sobriety checkpoints. So my medium-term outcome is that by the 2023 Wisconsin budget, we will lift the ban on sobriety checkpoints, and funds will be allocated for active checkpoints in all 72 Wisconsin counties. Now, about those years, Wisconsin has a 2-year budget cycle, and it starts in the odd year. So we are currently in the 2019-2020 budget, and it goes forth from there. Now, the next medium-term outcome is that in the 2023-24 budget, we will increase the Wisconsin excise tax by 300% to 24 cents per gallon of beer sold. Now, of course, this is beer that does not include hard alcohol, but we're focusing on beer. And the third medium-term outcome is that we will increase in the 2023-2024 budget, increase the proportion of dollars for substance use going to prevention and treatment from its current level of 2% to 5%. So those are my three medium-term outcomes. A point of note for all of those. When you are determining the activities or the outcomes, you want to make sure there is an evidence base. You need to have something strong. It can't be just something you want to try. There has to be something to support what you are doing. In the case of the sobriety checkpoints, for example, the research states that the installation of sobriety checkpoints decreases fatalities, traffic fatalities, alcohol related or drug related, by 18 to 24%. That is massive. So that's a pretty big dent into what we are looking to do as far as reducing the overall rate. Increasing the excise tax by 300%. Now, there isn't a whole lot of literature about specifically beer tax or alcohol tax, but there is on tobacco. And we know that on a population level, increasing tobacco tax does impact overall use. And then finally, increasing the proportion of budget dollars going to prevention and treatment. Well, the money that goes for this is from the state, and those require the activities to be evidence-based. So we are inferring that the increase of dollars or the proportion of dollars, prevention and treatment, will come with it evidence-based activities. So there's our three medium-term outcomes, and now I'm going to flip over to the left to the inputs. The inputs are who has to come to the table, or sometimes what has to come to the table. Now this, what we're looking at, is mostly policy based, so it's not a lot of dollars involved. So our inputs here are community coalitions. We're talking about sobriety checkpoints in all 72 counties, so we need those community level partners. Police groups, particularly again for the sobriety checkpoints. Legislators, we're talking policy in pretty much every angle of this, so we need them. The Wisconsin Tavern League. Why has the beer tax not increased? It's the Wisconsin Tavern League. They are a powerful lobbying group in the state. But we don't want to make the mistake of assuming that they're just this homogenous group of individuals who are not willing to bend on things in the public interest. So we want to do our best to reach out and bring them to the table. So next we go more to those specific activities, how we're going to get to our outcomes. One, we're going to organize meetings between police groups and legislators regarding sobriety checkpoints. Who do the legislators want to hear from? It's the police groups, because they will be the ones conducting it, and they are the ones who have to deal with these current alcohol-related traffic fatalities. Two, talk about the beer tax. First, we want to quantify the economic impacts of increasing the beer tax. So at 6 cents per gallon, Wisconsin consumes, on average, about 30 million gallons of beer a year. That's a lot. But that amounts to about $2 million in tax money. If we increase it by 300%, we will then get to $8 million. So that's a $6 million increase in the tax revenue generated. Now we also want to conduct focus groups and develop materials for an information campaign. Increasing taxes doesn't really go over very well. So we need to inform people about why this is needed. And now finally at the bottom, where we're talking about dollars for substance abuse, prevention and treatment, we want meetings and position papers to quantify the cost benefit of prevention and treatment activities. And for this, we want treatment and prevention specialists and legislators. So now this leads to our short-term outcomes. At the top, the sobriety checkpoints. Because because we're talking about lifting a ban that is part of the Wisconsin laws, I don't think a short-term outcome is very realistic. So we're just going to jump ahead to that medium-term outcome because I think that's more realistic, but also the impact would be immediate. When in regards to the beer tax, short-term, we want to get support and we want to get information out there. So we're focusing on trying to get some support from Tavern League. It's not going to be unanimous, but some support, and begin a campaign to promote the health and economic benefits of a beer tax. And then finally, for the substance abuse prevention and treatment money, first we want to increase the amount that goes to substance use and substance use prevention. So we're not robbing Peter to pay Paul. We want to increase the pot of money in one budget cycle and then reallocate in the next one. So that's our short to medium to long term outcomes. So there you go. So we have our inputs, who's coming to the activities leading to our short, medium, and long term outcomes. And finally, at the bottom, there are two things here: assumptions and external factors. Those are more notes to yourself, things that you need to keep in mind. So the assumptions for our plan: one, we're assuming that there's going to be a lack of a secular decline in alcohol consumption. People are going to continue to consume alcohol through this time period. We're assuming that police groups are in favor of sobriety checkpoints, but much like the Tavern League, we can't assume a universal, pro or con viewpoint. And then also we want to know that we're assuming that increasing beer tax would have economic benefits for Wisconsin. In public health, we have to be wary of unintended negative consequences, so we want to be sure that the economic impact will be positive. And then finally, some external factors to take into consideration: the elections at the state and federal levels during this time period, and that there will in fact be community support for the effort. So there you go. I know it can be intimidating to fill one of these out. Luckily, again, there is no right or wrong way. It's a soft place to land, so put in your information. Try to think about logically, linearly, state your problem, be pragmatic, but also reach for the stars. You want to make the biggest impact you can. So please contact me with any questions, and I look forward to your submissions. Take care.